What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Yala,
Ba, 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 ba.
your thrice weekly podcast where we talk about the hottest news with a touch of what, Terrence?
Good old humor. Can't go wrong.
Good old humor, man.
Yeah.
It's the third episode of the week. It's a sunny but rainy, then sunny again Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
It's kind of like this is like Singapore's version of autumn, right? Kind of.
I guess so. lah.
Yeah.
Entering winter already, entering winter.
Yeah, our winter is our monsoon season, right? That's our winter.
Yeah, correct.
But autumn
Yeah,
is when
correct,
it's like hot, damn hot, and then damn cold, damn hot, damn cold, like interchangeably, right?
Yeah, I mean, the past years are fucking hot, man. Like, holy shit. Like, step out, you can feel the sun on your neck, no?
And literally, it looks like it's going to rain outside, but it's hot as hell because it's humid and everything. And sometimes it just hangs in the air. Like, it doesn't rain for like hours on end. This is crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, I've never been more grateful for being hairy because I assume that it still blocks a little bit of sun from my skin. Just on my neck and all that. I was like, oh shit, this is hot as hell. And then, of course, you see people just up and about who don't have a chance to work from home, which what we discussed. You're like, oh crap. I forgot how it's like to be in the sunlight head on for a long time, sir.
Yeah,
Whew.
that's true.
Yeah. But yes, cool. Closing in on Deepavali weekend also.
Big weekend, right? Big weekend for
I mean,
for yourself, no? Yes, no?
okay lah. I think because I haven't invited anyone to our house, unlike last year, including yourself, because I'm going to see all of you all at the wedding, or at least my close friends. So
I'm so offended. I'm very offended. Like,
why?
I mean, you were my best chance at like attending a Deepavali celebration.
Fuck you, you always use me for all these Deepavali goodies and Deepavali festivities. You just come for, I don't know why. So yeah, you're not going to get it this year. You're going to wait for next year. You're going to have to wait for next year.
Yeah. But it's a long weekend that sort of just crept onto everyone, right?
Yeah, man, long weekend.
Yeah. But you mean no big celebration for your family as well?
I mean, just some family gatherings and all that. Just one, like a small gathering. I mean, over the years also, I think coming off COVID, the gatherings also have gotten smaller. So now that's like status quo.
Oh, really? There's no like backlog of like, we haven't celebrated a big one for the last 2 years.
I think for my family, not so much. For certain families, I think there's still going to be the Diwali balls and all that kind of stuff.
Diwali? What's the Diwali ball?
Okay, so, I mean, it's just a celebration. So Diwali and Deepavali, okay, so this is where I might get flamed. They are two terms referring to the same festival. I don't know why there's Diwali versus Deepavali. Okay. But in the event that you do hear someone say Diwali, it refers to Deepavali.
Okay.
But for Sindhis, the more common term is Diwali. So it's a Diwali ball. And like it's a party. It's a party where all
I was asking about the ball. What's the ball? Not so much like what is Deepavali or what's Diwali. Dude, like fucking I've lived in Singapore my whole life and you think I'm asking what is Deepavali? Come on, man.
Hey,
you gotta give me a bit more credit.
We got people who are new to Singapore who listen to this and I'm just trying to educate them fuck.
Yeah. Anybody who's like listening to this and doesn't know what Deepavali is, please let us know in the comments and thank Harish for enlightening us.
It's not Deepavali, that's Diwali. Are you familiar with the term Diwali or not? Diwali.
My understanding is two.
Those is the short form.
No, two terms that are essentially the same thing, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, then. Okay, no, I want to know when you said the ball, I was more interested in what this ball is. You like explain to me what Deepavali versus Diwali. I'm like, huh?
No wonder my fiance says sometimes I can be long-winded. But anyway, the ball is just like this gathering. And like, I mean, for the Sindhis, they will have something at Sindhu House, which is just like a clubhouse kind of thing where all the Sindhis come together and hang out, I guess. And I don't know, trade business. And yeah, so then there will be this kind of balls around Singapore. It's just a celebration.
So it's like, it's a thing if I go to someone, are you going to a ball this weekend? Like,
yeah, you can ask.
Okay,
no, really? You must say Diwali. You must say Diwali ball.
No, as in,
I'm going to a ball this weekend.
Yeah, I'm asking you what you're saying as like a ball is like commonly understood as, you're going to a Diwali ball. Because I mean, I'm saying because I don't. You ask any Chinese person, oh, Chinese New Year, are you going to a Chinese New Year ball? They'll be like, huh? What are you talking about?
Yeah, for some reason, Diwali ball is the term. I've never heard of a Diwali party, even though that rhymes.
Diwali Chinese people, Chinese majority, you all heard it here first.
Yeah, Diwali ball. Yeah, if you want to act like you understand like Indian culture, just say, hey, did you go to the Diwali ball last weekend? No. Oh, I heard it was great.
And there's more than one. There's more than one. It's not one ball, right? One ball to rule them all. It's like multiple. Yeah,
but Diwali balls just sound a bit weird also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, how was the Diwali balls? It just sounds, it doesn't communicates a very different message.
Okay.
Communicates a very different message.
Got it. So Deepavali, okay, I mean, it's going to be a more family affair for you, lah. Smaller family affair.
For me.
Got it.
Yeah. Correct. And to everyone else celebrating, have a great weekend, man. And even though that sounds like we're ending the podcast, we're just beginning.
Yeah. But I mean, I think related to having a great weekend is, I mean, a shameless plug also is to please, check out our TikTok account. A few people know that we have a TikTok account as well, where we post short clips from this from our podcast, and sometimes we engage in TikTok dances and challenges too. Maybe less in recent months because we don't meet up as often, but then when we do, we still sometimes do some things on TikTok lah. And TikTok's the big beast that we're trying to figure out now as two boomers, millennial boomers lah. Yeah, so help us out there.
Sweet. All right. Well, that was a nice light-hearted start to a very, very dark and somber first topic.
Yes.
And that is the recent announcement by MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, or recent release of 3 different studies that kind of show that the majority of Singaporeans do support the death penalty to a certain extent.
That's right.
And this was brought up by Minister Shanmugam, who just referred to these 3 studies that were done between 2018 and 2021. And we'll go into the differences between the studies and what it covered. But that was the gist of it. Literally, the title says MHA releases for the first time full studies showing support for death penalty to deter drug trafficking. And a lot of the titles were similar in sound.
Yeah.
So, what made you want to talk about this?
I think it's I think the preconceived notion I had was that when I read this report, it's gonna feel like a lot of propaganda. It's gonna feel like the survey was very skewed towards one answer. It's gonna feel like obviously this is the results that they arrived at because of the way they conducted the survey. But the results surprised me. It wasn't exactly that way. Yeah.
As in the results of going through the readings and all, is it?
Yeah.
The results of you reading it.
Yeah, the results, how I felt after I read it actually surprised me. Yeah. So I thought, okay, this might be interesting to talk about since, death penalty and all, and drug trafficking in Singapore is a hot topic these days, right?
Yeah. I would say, when I first saw the title, specifically that title, for the first time full studies showing support, I would say if there wasn't the releases for the first time full studies, my initial thought would be like, okay, that it's another survey that is just polling this random group of 1,000 people, don't know when, maybe at the height of COVID, saying they support the death penalty. But then, like you also, I looked through the reports, and I mean, when I saw the title, I was like, okay, releases for the first time full studies. That means we're going to have access to the actual final report, which I don't recall that happening very often for topics like this. So click through. It took me a while to find a link to the website through the articles.
Yep.
I think it was only CNA that put the article link, the link to the research papers in the article. Straits Times today.
Now you mentioned it, it's something that annoys me a lot. Is that
it's fucking annoying.
All these news sites, they make it so hard for you to, or at least they don't want you to get off the site, I think. So they might hyperlink the Ministry of Home Affairs, but you click that and then it goes to other articles on the same site about Ministry of Home Affairs rather than about the actual survey itself, which has its own hyperlink, right?
Yeah, exactly. So shout out to CNA for doing something that the readers want, and for today and Straits Times to like, yo man, we have to Google it and then go to the publications page of Ministry of Home Affairs, and you very well know where the reports are. What is wrong about putting a link there? You scared is it? People will read through and challenge you all.
No, they scared people click away from their own
click away from the website.
That's the main thing. So I'm like, oh God, come on, please. Yeah, I mean, if you're
But then you open it in a new tab lah, so people will still come back to your website when they systematically go through the tabs.
Yeah, and especially in interest, public interest affairs like that, I think it's important lah, right? Yeah. But anyway, back to your point.
Yeah, so I mean, at the high level, essentially, some of the stats that were kind of referred to was, okay, so let's see. There was one study by the IPS, Institute of Policy Studies, in 2020 that found that 74% of 2,000 Singapore residents and PRs agree or strongly agreed with the use of death penalty for the most serious crimes. 58.6% were in favor of retaining the death penalty, and 53% supported the death penalty in general. And only 22% expressed that they do not approve the death penalty in all instances. So then, I mean, this study kind of differentiated between the death penalty for intentional murder, drugs, or use of firearms with the intention of causing injury. Then that was the first study. Should I just run through overall for all three?
Yeah, sure.
Then there was a RSD study, which was there was the IPS, the RSD. So RSD is the Research and Statistics Division of the Ministry of Home Affairs. That was done in 2021. There were 2,000 citizens and PRs that were surveyed, and 73.7% agreed that the death penalty should be used for the most serious crimes, while those who disagreed, 11.2%.
Yep.
So again, the same three for intentional firearms and drug trafficking was 80.5%, 65.6%, 71%. Then, so those were the two studies, and then the third study, let's see here. Okay, so those were the two main studies that were quoted in this article. Just for completeness, the third study that was not quoted was something by the Home Team Behavioral Sciences Center of the Ministry of Home Affairs. So this was done in 2018. So very similar sentiments. I won't go into the details, but essentially, if you look at the numbers, you look at the stats, there is majority support for not only the death penalty, but death penalty for drugs.
Yeah. I mean, not to be a stickler for numbers, right? But in fact, I'm going to not be a stickler for numbers, but I think generally, just by going through or just a cursory glancing through of the statistics, the understanding is around 70%, at least 70% of Singaporeans agree with the various ways, with the various laws about the death penalty that we have in Singapore, right? Generally.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. It might be a very general statement, but what you hear, what you see is basically seems to be a majority, right, that are agreeing with the Singapore authorities' stance on death penalty for various serious crimes, right?
Yeah. And then, I mean, supplementing that is also the third study that I mentioned, the MHA study, was something that was done in 2021, which found that about 70% of respondents from regional countries also felt that the death penalty is more effective than life imprisonment. And there was a survey of 7,000 respondents from countries in the region where many arrested drug traffickers have come from in recent years. So there was internal within Singapore, but there was also 7,000 respondents from around the region that kind of echoed that one sentiment that Terence just mentioned, that about 70% agree about the death penalty as some form of punishment for the drug trafficking.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you read those stats, when you read 70% and all, same thing, you can imagine that, it's very, very, just some who knows about the questions. But the reports one report is 9 pages, and this is hardcore academic reports. One is 18 pages and another one is 16 pages.
Yeah, that's right.
But as you went through, what stuck out to you?
There wasn't. Yeah, there were. I'm not saying that it was bulletproof, right? But in terms of the methodology or like what you said, questions asked and all that, I didn't have that much of a bone to pick with a lot of it. The way they were phrasing and asking questions and being quite specific and quite about what they were asking also. I thought, okay, it seems like they checked the boxes such that even if someone came in with a more skeptical eye like I did, I would be okay. These are literally the results of this survey right, and I don't doubt the authenticity of the survey and everything. It's just I suppose it's what was interesting was that I also just reading a lot of the comments online was that similarly a lot of people also felt okay, this is essentially what the situation is now and these are the stats to back it up. So you can't really criticize or say that it was very unfairly done or what yeah. So that's the general sentiment that I was getting from people online. How about you?
I mean, reading through it, it does get quite technical. And I mean, I don't think we need to go through the exact questions, but it does seem quite substantial to someone like a lay researcher to me.
Yeah.
And at least more so than other studies that we have seen or heard of. But I mean, same thing when I was looking at sentiments online or even my own thoughts is like, one question was that, okay, so this is clearly in response to a lot of scrutiny, not only from Singaporeans, but also from the international community. As a result of some high-profile cases from Singapore in the past few years.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, so it is a substantial study. I know some people were criticizing that, of course, depending on the questions you can ask or who you ask, you will get these answers. Or if you're looking for an answer, you can phrase the questions and all that. But then when you look at the report, okay, it feels quite substantial. But certain things that stuck out to me was when you're talking about regional countries, right? Based on what I found, there aren't many countries in Southeast Asia that don't have the death penalty. I think at this point it is only East Timor and the Philippines.
Yeah.
I know Duterte has his own death policy, but that's I think separate from the death penalty, from what I understand. So if you're asking people from countries who come from people who come from countries with the death penalty, it's almost like, would you do a similar survey for people who come from countries without the death penalty? And I just thought, okay, maybe that is the next piece of the puzzle that I hope there can be some research on, because this one almost feels like the thing about the death penalty is an effective deterrent.
Yeah.
I mean, I would also say that I agree that it is the best, it is a good deterrent, but I think Brunei has this law that you can get your hand cut off if you are caught stealing. That's a good deterrent, but is it the best deterrent to have? So that's why when I hear statements like good deterrent, of course it's a good deterrent. Like nobody wants to die. I think someone on Reddit also shared a link to some long interview with his ex-kingpin or something, and he said even when they're thinking strategically about which countries to go into, if there's a death penalty in that country, chances are they would deprioritize it, which is understandable.
Yeah.
You know? So that was one question that came up.
Yeah, and I think looking through the results, I realized maybe what was happening in my own head was that you're trying to, if you're trying to sort of project your own ethical or moral stance on these results, right? Then you would generally definitely see it a certain way. But if the truth is that, a lot of Singaporeans or Singapore residents have have basically come to an agreement with what the propaganda says as well, right? That they've been convinced of the propaganda, then it is true that the majority do support the death penalty, and I think that's what the situation is going to be a separate kind of discussion from what the ethics of a death penalty, supporting a death penalty is, right? Like you said, is it a deterrent? Obviously, it's a deterrent. Any kind of punishment will be some sort of deterrent to committing a crime, right? But to what extent is it a better deterrent than than life imprisonment or what. I think this survey also covers that, right? That's I think that's more a moral, ethical question also that people need to square off first. But if the case is that the majority here does support the use of the death penalty for all these instances mentioned, right? Then you would imagine why the government or the authorities would be so adamant about keeping the law as it is, in spite of all the international pressure to change it, right? Yeah, and the pressure doesn't come from just activists. The pressure comes from the fact that in places like Thailand, they recently legalized marijuana use, right? For example. So that kind of pressure is not just the pressure of like, oh, don't be evil. It's the pressure of why are you like such a backwater country, in terms of legalizing drugs versus your neighbors like in Thailand, right?
Yeah. So that's where because I mean, it's funny you say. I was recently at some event where there was someone who was like in her 40s with 2 kids, and she was like, I can't believe Thailand legalized cannabis. I have 2 kids and this is horrible. This is terrible. So like what you said, I can imagine someone who is reacting that way when there's talk of potentially like abolishing the death penalty, which is like a deterrent to drug crime. You might even move your stance. You're like, oh fuck no, man, we're keeping it because now it's almost at the edge. Like previously you hear about drug being legal in Amsterdam and LA. It feels so far away, but then now it's just there. It's just there. You can get on a flight, you can take some drugs and come back. So I think, that's where, I mean, it's okay. It's still like, if you look at the fact that they're releasing the full studies, I think it's still a good thing, right? Where people who are skeptical can go in and look. But I mean, then it becomes a question, because I know some people were rebutting online saying, oh, if you're saying 70% support something means that's the way to go, you do a poll on GST lah. How many people want to increase GST? If 70% don't want to increase, then okay, is that the right thing to do? Right.
Yeah. But that's so I mean, when you see something like that, it's also that kind of what if kind of argument. Not what if lah, like how about kind of argument lah, right? Where like you
which is like
something in Singapore. No, I mean the whataboutism lah, right? They call it that, where basically if you say, in Singapore cost of living is so terrible, it's crazy. And how about, then they'll rebut you. When you're looking at Singapore, how about this other place, like San Francisco or whatever, even crazier and all that, So it's just this endless spiral of just comparing yourself to worse off places, so that just to try to make the argument invalid lah, which is, I think, it's not a very productive way of talking about how to make things better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you think Singapore sucks? How about this other place? Then you'll be grateful for Singapore, rather than like focusing on, okay, how can we make Singapore better, rather than talk about how Singapore is already better than another place, lah, right?
Yeah. Correct. Like, I mean, there was one research paper that I chanced upon by reading of all websites, Coconuts. That pointed to this 2018 study from NUS that I think they took I mean, the results kind of showed, okay, people still support the death penalty if you're looking at a general statement, but they differentiated between, say, mandatory and discretionary death penalty, even for drugs. So like one of the findings, there's also a 117-page report, but one of the stats that in the summary was less than half supported the mandatory death penalty for each of those 3 offenses, namely drugs, intentional murder, and use of firearms with an intent to hurt. But more than half supported the discretionary death penalty. I think right now maybe there's not enough focus on the fact that it's either mandatory or not. Especially for drugs.
So what you're saying is that mandatory means that it's the moment the amount of drugs you traffic are above a certain threshold, regardless of the circumstances of that, you basically you face a death penalty lah, right?
Yeah.
Discretionary is saying that it's not so binary. It's not so 1 and 0. It's just not so black and white. It's more, they look at the overall circumstances, maybe how much drugs you're carrying, and in the overall circumstances, rather how close you are to being the drug kingpin and all that, then in those cases, like the judge decides your sentence, right?
Yeah. And this is coming from like Mr. Black and White, no? Or at least up till a few years ago. Where I also prefer binary shit, right? Like this whole thing about, gray in between and all. But it just felt like, because I mean, even in recent years, we've seen cases of like a mother with 6 kids in KL who's, struggling to survive and has been coerced into becoming a drug mule, getting the death penalty. Then, just hypothetically, if there's a legit like drug supplier who's, like trying to establish a syndicate in Singapore or Malaysia, he gets caught for the same amount, they both get the same sentence.
Yeah.
Feels like even without any room for something else, it feels like, wow, that feels like maybe we should think more about that kind of stuff. So I appreciated this report because it kind of looked at nuances like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But and also some people did raise the point that I think this survey itself, the fact that people are thinking that surveyed think that it's a good deterrent means that it is a good deterrent already lah. The fact that it's drummed into people's heads, and they can literally articulate it. That means what they've set out to do, what the government set out to do when they instituted this mandatory death penalty is a good deterrent. It is working, because we always hear about, it's so hard how do you prove that something a deterrent? How many, like you can't really calculate how many crimes could have happened if there wasn't this law, right? So I think this is, as a metric, it's an easy way to see that. Oh, okay, this is the number of people who even they've even heard, they know about this death penalty in Singapore already, and that itself is an effective deterrent already lah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
so,
I mean,
no man, it's that's why I'm like I was on that. I think I started off on that slightly skeptical bandwagon, but then towards the end of it, not that I changed my mind about the ethical and moral side of things, but I see that, okay, now there seems to be a lot of data telling me that if I go and talk to 10 people outside, probably 7 of them would be saying, yeah, I support the death penalty. Yeah.
Okay, so I need to correct myself because I was just thinking like, oh shit.
Duterte, is it? Duterte is no longer.
As in,
okay.
Actually, apparently in 2012, Singapore actually did amend our laws to replace mandatory death penalty regime for drug trafficking with a discretionary sentencing regime under certain conditions. So I correct myself.
And what were those conditions?
I'm trying to find them out now. One of the conditions with respect to drug trafficking was that the convicted trafficker had to be granted a certificate by the public prosecutor stating that the trafficker had provided substantive assistance that led to the disruption of drug trafficking activities. Oh, so basically, if you are caught drug trafficking, you have to cooperate lah.
I see. Got it.
So I think so maybe it's just the questioning, the nuance, because why I caught wind of this was because one of the reports actually highlighted that about 54% of the respondents for one of the surveys didn't know about the discretionary death penalty for drug-related offences. So up till a minute ago, I was part of the 54%. So I got to correct myself. So there is a certain level of discretion, but it's just under certain conditions lah. But I think like philosophically, if you're asking people, it's still a worthwhile question lah.
Yeah, correct.
Because if you ask me my thoughts on mandatory death penalty for drug trafficking versus intentional murder, that one also will be different.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I mean, in recent times, there have been certain crimes that have taken place in Singapore where I read about them, and I was like, oh my God, these people, like if there's a maximum punishment that we can give to them, we should absolutely give to them, like, There are some cases of like child abuse and even domestic helper abuse that are really gruesome, really difficult to read. And you read that and then you're like, wow, this is way worse than what the damage that a drug trafficker could do lah. But that's just how the law is lah, right? Where it's not based on emotion or sentiment. It's really based on it has to follow the letter of the law. So right now that's where our laws are, and it does seem like there is quite an overwhelming public support for it. But
Yeah.
just a question, like why do you think it is that the timing of this release, right? Do you think there's a specific reason for the timing of this release now? Like because I think we've even spoken about Shanmugam going on BBC's Hard Talk and all that, and having to even defend Singapore's stance, very tough stance on drug trafficking. So is this release in response to all this pressure from internationally and from Thailand and all? Or is it more about the fact that there are people who don't agree with it and they are quite vocal about their disagreement with the death penalty?
I mean, I think it's probably a mix because like so far this past year feels like there's been a lot of activity in the international space targeted towards Singapore about our drug related policies. And I think even last month there were two statements, one by the UK based International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute and Switzerland based International Commission of Jurists calling for Singapore to place a moratorium on executions with a view to abolish the death penalty. So I think this year feels like more so than last few years. There's a lot of attention. So I think there's that. Then there's the legalization of cannabis in Thailand. So I don't know, man. I think it's just it's a sign of the times, or like wouldn't say it's a perfect timing. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have any theory?
Remember there was a very interesting comment when we made a podcast about Vogue Singapore having their license, like the application for a 1-year license revoked, and then they had to reapply for a shorter license. And then there was a comment on Reddit where someone pointed out that Vogue Singapore had a very stylish magazines, very stylish spread about anti-death penalty activists in Singapore, right? Where they photographed and interviewed I think Kirsten Han, Constance Singham, and one more activist. I can't remember the name, but I did read the article. And then immediately there was a response from the MHA to that article as well, right? So I mean, I think in the Reddit there was some there may be some chatter or speculation that this also caused Vogue Singapore to lose the license. But I mean, it could be a complete separate issue, But I think the point is that MHA is also feeling like, hey, there's this almost I mean, it does feel like a glamorization of this anti-death penalty stance going on as well in Singapore, right? Vogue Singapore, literally in a fashion magazine, that these people are these activists are being profiled. So maybe to really try and lay the groundwork and the facts of the argument. That's why they're putting this out there now,
I think another thing also, which I just found out before this, was that on 14 September, around that time, right, Malaysia actually decided to end the death penalty. Did you know that?
No. I read about it, but I forgot.
Yeah, it was first mentioned in June, where it was tabled, and apparently on 13 September, the government decided to replace the mandatory death penalty with alternative punishment. So they has agreed in principle to the proposal to substitute sentences for 11 offences carrying the death penalty. So so Malaysia. So I mean, that's where you can imagine like there is momentum gathering. You saw that with repeal 377A, right? It was many years in the making. We were looking at other democracies or other Asian countries lifting or repealing it. So I can imagine there being kind of heat lah. Okay, so what's Singapore going to do? What's Singapore going to do? Then now it's like, yo man, we spoke to the people. We spoke to the people.
Yeah, if you want to change anything, come and run for elections. Come and run
for elections. You can change, but you got to be in the parliament. Yeah. So, I mean, I think now more than ever, if you have never really had a perspective on the death penalty, it's maybe just worth thinking about. Because, I mean, ultimately, it's one of those things that we do need to figure out as a society, I feel. And it's just, I mean, just just have a think. Have a think. Maybe this after you listen to this podcast or after this topic in particular, just pause it and think. But of course, come back and finish the rest of the podcast, lah. But just think.
That's right. Have a think about
man.
it.
And of course, if you have comments like Reddit, just go on and holler there, man.
Yeah.
Because death penalty is always tricky.
Yeah.
Always tricky.
Speaking of international pressure, right?
Yes.
One of our institutions in Singapore is also facing some international pressure to do the right thing. And what is this institution we're talking about?
The institution is the Asian Civilisations Museum. And apparently there's a Cambodian team that is like just hunting down museums around the world trying to retrieve what it says are lost national artifacts. And trying to get it back. And not say they're just going in and you give it back to us. I mean, they are looking at licensing and loaning, but to just reclaim what they feel is rightly theirs. And I think, there was a Singapore, the Singapore Asian Civilisations Museum did get contacted by the team, and they apparently defended their acquisition of a Nepalese religious sculpture, which they bought from a supposedly improper artifact collector. So this why, I mean, like this was just interesting, but what made you want to talk about it?
I guess it's I think there's more of the developing countries around Southeast Asia, even ourselves, as a very young country, are coming to terms with our history as a colonial, as a once a colonial outpost and everything, right? Then now we're modernizing and starting to realize that, hey, there's so much of our history that has also been taken from us forcefully, right? And if those pieces of our history in terms of artifacts, cultural artifacts, are now residing, in other countries that took them, that where the authorities or the people of that country took them by force, right? Or even like stole them or something like that. Is there a moral obligation for them to return these artifacts, even though they've done a good job of preserving it and putting it out there in public for people to look at and appreciate, right? And even if it's procured through legal means as well, is there a moral obligation for these institutions to return these artifacts? Because I think for this case, the team from Cambodia is not just Singapore, but it's on a global quest, right? To retrieve all these national artifacts to home, So other countries like Japan, Korea, Taiwan are also included, where they want to look at all these different Cambodian antiquities, and it's not just looking at the actual artifact itself, but to also look at any invoices, any documentation that really gives you a clue of how it was procured and whether it was done through legal means and all that, right? Yeah. So
I mean,
when any country that has a museum or that you probably will come up with some of these moral quandaries.
Yeah. So I mean, okay, what's your relationship with museums over the years?
Over the years, what do you mean?
Like, do you like museums? Do you dislike museums? Do you think they're boring as fuck?
I mean, no. I think museums have a very important place in any country's cultural makeup, because they do a job that often we forget that it's very important, the archiving and education of the people about their past and their history and all that, right? So I especially now with a kid and all, all the places that I used to think, it's really nice to go to a museum for a date and things like that. Now they become, it'd be nice to bring my kid to a museum to see a bit of history that he might not be aware of, right? So yeah, I mean that's my general relationship with museums. How about you? Why are you asking this question specifically?
because I grew up not liking museums. I was like, why you want to? I never used to like history. I never used to like museums. I'm like, yeah, it's just in the past, blah, blah. But then I grew to love museums. I think one turning point was when I went to London for the first time in uni, and I went to the British Museum, and I was like, holy shit, this is damn cool. And I went to the Smithsonian and all that. But it was also around that time where someone, I can't remember who, kind of like there was some conversation that made me realize, oh shit, like these things is like an Egyptian mummy that's 10,000 years old. How come it's in the British Museum? Then I just started. I mean, I never dived deep into it, but it always struck me as like, okay, these museums, they have cultural artifacts of other cultures. I'm guessing it wasn't done like what was that process like? If you have a 10,000-year-old mummy, or like the oldest mummy that has ever been found, but it's in the British Museum, why is it there? So then over the years, I came to realize, okay, like the whole ecosystem of museums also feels like, wow, there's a lot of things that goes on in the background. Like. But it was almost always in the West, like, the British Museum, the Smithsonian, the traditional colonial powers. Like. But then when I saw this article, I was like, oh shit. I mean, even Singapore, we have our own Asian Civilisations Museum, and it does have artifacts from around the region. Like. Then I was like, oh shit, how were these acquired? Like? So then I also totally agree. I think museums have an amazing place in society, and I think they should be cherished. But chances are there's a lot of things going on in the background, man.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I want to say, is it like Zeus? No, like, but there's a certain element of like, okay, is this supposed to be here, or should it be in the country of origin? La?
Yeah.
So that's been my relationship with museums.
Yeah. I think, so it begs the question also, like, these artifacts are national treasures, right? And even you would consider them international treasures in a way, because let's say that British Museum is visited by a lot of people, a lot of tourists, and it might be the one and only time they actually get to see some of these artifacts as well, right? And you can't deny that these institutions have, because of their history and everything, they have a lot more easy access to funding, and even down to like the procedures of taking care of all these artifacts and all that, right? They might be better, or they might be the experts or something like that. So, but if you were to, leave it in the original country, or the place that it was taken from, it might not, for various reasons, right? Whether it's political, social upheaval, or just not as they're just not as advanced in taking care of all these ancient artifacts, right? It could be subject to a lot of it could one day be destroyed, lah. If not just wear and tear or whatever, it'll be gone forever, lah, right? So is it a better thing that there's someone who knows how to take care of it, that's taking care of it now? But it could still one day be returned to the country, lah, right?
Yeah.
The question is, does it need to happen now or what, lah, right?
Yeah.
I'm only saying this because I think I believe there was a time that I traveled to, I think, Myanmar, if I'm not wrong, and there were certain very historic historical locales within Myanmar that I was surprised that they weren't like on the what was the World Heritage list, right?
UNESCO World Heritage.
Yeah, UNESCO World Heritage list, as compared to something like Botanic Gardens. Then I realized it's because there are I think there was talks of it being on the World Heritage list and all these this historical site being on the World Heritage list, but because of what the locals had been doing to the ancient statues and artifacts, or not taking care of them properly, or making modifications to them, that such that they they couldn't qualify to be on the UNESCO World Heritage list, lah. As in, there had been additions, there had been modifications done to the original site itself, lah, right?
Yeah.
So it's no longer what it was before, and no longer reflects of the actual heritage and history of the place. so they couldn't enter it in the World Heritage List. So it made me realize, even if sometimes if you leave the artifact in its original country, it's actually less well taken care of than if it's not in the original country, right?
Yeah. And I mean, this is a good point because the worst example was in 2014 and 2015 in Iran. The city of Palmyra, that's in Iraq, sorry. Wait, fuck, Palmyra, Syria. Fuck, shit, sorry. The ancient city of Palmyra, which is in Syria, which used to function as a Roman trading outpost. There were 28 buildings that were blown up by ISIS as they waged a cultural war, right? So, I mean, of course, that is an extreme version, but there's also the benefit that museums can bring by really protecting these artifacts. I guess where the issue arises is like if they say they own it, and then here's a country that comes, because take for example the Asian Civilized the ACM in Singapore, right? There was this artifact, this 400-year-old religious artifact that was allegedly stolen from Nepal in 1999. That was found to be located in the ACM in Singapore. So the Lost Arts of Nepal, which is this group, this initiative, kind of contacted CNA and said, "Yo, give us back our shit." But then, they contacted the museum. But then the museum proved that they acquired it legally via whatever processes are the threshold or benchmark.
Established processes, right? International
established processes. Yeah. And then that the object is not listed in the Art Laws Register. So, I mean, okay lah, it's not listed in the Art Laws Register, but you can imagine like countries like that maybe were not as developed as the countries that do have these artifacts. What I mean is like, fuck these processes lah, things were stolen. Yeah. How the hell are we going to register with the processes that are already in place lah? So it feels like, wow, this can be tricky. And the ACM actually has returned something before. In 2015, they returned to India an 11th century bronze sculpture believed to have been illegally removed from the country. Yeah, so they purchased that from a defunct New York gallery accused of a smuggling operation.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where I'm like, I think it's not always a slam dunk case to me that, if a country insists that it's theirs, it has to be returned to them, right?
Yeah, correct.
But you kind of need to examine what the processes in acquiring the artifact, and what going forward, how is the artifact going to be protected and all? Because I think that's the basic responsibility you would have as a museum. To whatever comes under your charge, you kind of got to treat it like your own little baby, right? That you need to take care of and make sure, even if you send it off, someone else is taken care of also.
Yeah. I mean, literally, if you adopt a child, you just don't go to a developing country and like, yo, man, you're mine. There are processes in place. So I just found it interesting that, wow, even the Singapore Museum not free, which is understandable because it does have old shit. Yeah. So it was just, okay then. And I can imagine the processes being so deep and so many things to skirt around. Like any museum that has any artifact, like what are the odds of it actually coming from the country of the museum?
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
So probably this, I mean, it feels like, have there been movies? They've probably been made movies about this. Was National Treasure anything about this? Or that one is totally different?
The Nicolas Cage one? It's a slightly different thing. It's more Da Vinci Code-ish than anything. But I mean, Indiana Jones, obviously, so Indiana Jones was about an archaeologist going around collecting, he's almost like more like a bounty hunter kind of, right? And he's collecting all these artifacts and saying that they belong in museums, and he's literally taking them from the original countries they were from, right? And insisting that they belong to museums, which is some kind of cultural, is a bit of a cultural heist as well, right? When Indiana Jones does that, so don't know, man. It's a tricky thing, to wrap your head around, and maybe. But the interesting thing is probably some of these returning of these cultural artifacts and all is also part of diplomacy between countries, right? To celebrate relationship the relations between Singapore and India. We're also going to return this artifact, blah, blah. So it can be used for diplomatic purposes as well.
So next time if I go to your house, I'll steal something. Then like 2 years later, when we have a disagreement, I'll be like, okay, you know what, Terence? Here's this picture frame that I took 4 years ago. I mean, I acquired it, it was just there. I took it, but as a show of goodwill, I'm giving back the picture frame that I found in your house.
Yeah, but as long as you add on the being allowing me to visit for Deepavali, then then we'll be all square. That's all
That'll be in the terms
Deepavali goodies.
Yeah, the T and C's, the T and C's.
Yeah, correct.
Correct. So it's just one aspect of museums that never occurred to me until I was older. I was like, oh, correct, shit. Correct. That's interesting.
I do believe in 100 years will be, the people will be reckoning with like, how come our ancestors really they all thought like things like zoos and aquariums were okay, to imprison other beings and to, for your own benefit and all, and for your own entertainment, if anything. How did they possibly, how could they even build like this institution, this compound to do this, and then people literally paid money to come and see all these prisoners,
Yeah,
I think in 100 years will be our descendants will be reckoning with that,
I mean that legitimately happened with the concept of human zoos, because as we're doing research for our zoo themed animated TV series, I came across like human zoos, which was known as ethnological expositions, where they just brought like people from primitive countries in the 19th centuries, and they put them in like wooden fences, and people paid to go observe them. So there's a bunch of like dark-skinned people around a fire, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So 70 years later, we're like, hey, this is fucking fucked up, this is shit. Or even, more than that, sorry. First public human exhibition was in 1835.
Yeah.
So you look at it, you're like, that's fucked up. So maybe in 100 years, people will be like, okay, that's fucked up what you guys did. Pieces of shit.
So I think it's food for thought, right? Every time you go to a museum or a zoo and everything, I think a good thing to think about is like where your money is going. So is it towards conservation and all that, or is it going towards acquiring artifacts or animals illegally? I think that's something important to try and read up about.
Yeah, correct. So next time you're at a museum and the tour guide's giving a great thing, everyone's having the best time of their life, you put up your hand and say, excuse me, can I know how you got this artifact? Do you have the relevant permissions and licenses to display it?
Yeah.
Yeah, be that person.
And even goes beyond all these kind of cultural artifacts as well, right? For example, our Natural History Museum, we have like dinosaur skeleton and everything, right? I think 2 dinosaur skeletons. And I think what I learned was that, even the procuring of those dinosaur skeletons, it's a very it's fraught with a lot of discussions about where was the dinosaur skeleton found, who owns it, and who's allowed to sell it, who's allowed to buy it, and things like that, So it's a very interesting space that we don't hear a lot about. All we do is we go to a museum and we see it and we're like, oh, okay, we had money, we bought it, but there's actually a lot more to it, right?
Yeah. But I think it was during the time that I also realized like there are private collectors in the US, like wealthy individuals who can buy a dinosaur fossil, real one, for $3 million and just display it in your house.
Yeah.
You go to IKEA, you buy a nice flower pot or something. These people buy fucking dinosaur fossils for $3 million to put in their house.
Yeah. And they go and they don't like buy it through like legitimate. I mean, I'm not saying it's not legitimate, but they literally go to like expos and conferences and all that.
Yeah.
And they just buy them there, right?
That's the ultimate flex, no?
It's not like they turn up at the archaeological dig site and then I'm taking care of it. They literally just go to some expo or conference and then they make a bid and then they buy it.
That's why. Yeah. Can you imagine they go to their friend's house? Oh, your painting is from where? Oh, 1300, is it? Oh, my art piece is 4 million years old. No, fucking 4 million? 100 million years old.
Yeah.
Fucking flex. If you see someone with a dinosaur fossil in their house, right, they're next level already.
Yeah. The tail stretches from the kitchen to the head goes all the way to the living room, that kind of thing.
Yeah, correct. Correct. Okay, cool, man.
So after this kind of heavy topics, what is your one shock comment?
I know what your one show comment is going to be. Okay, I know. Okay.
No, actually, if it's about the 2007 thing, I think we're still running the poll on Instagram, so maybe we'll wait.
On
Instagram.
On
Instagram, yeah. Just put it up last night, yeah.
Okay. So then, my comment of the week was something posted just recently by Big Sloth Boy, long time commenter on our Reddit, who posted another picture with a sign saying "Beware of cyclists." They're a swear word I don't think I should say on the podcast, but then the caption was Terrence was reportedly seen walking away from this area. I mean, I just enjoy when people post stuff like that that's not really related to a topic. So yeah, shout out to you, man.
Yeah,
cheers, man. Yeah.
So it's not a meme, right? Or is it? It's just a.
It's not a meme,
comment.
It's not a meme. It's just a picture that made him or her think of you, lah.
Yeah. My one should comment, I guess, is from our most recent podcast from Original Goat, because we had a long discussion about the word hinterland, right? So Original Goat once said, "Didn't you guys take geography in school? Hinterland refers to a region that is serviced by a city. In colonial days, Singapore's hinterland was Malaya, where rubber and tin were produced and exported through Singapore. Conversely, foreign goods were imported through Singapore and distributed throughout Malaya. The sensitivity is that the hinterlands were usually poorer than the metropolis, so calling a region a hinterland can be viewed as looking down on people from that region." You took geography, right, when you were in school?
Yeah, I did.
And do you remember any mention of hinterland?
Actually, now I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I took geography in secondary school at JC, man.
Not JC.
Secondary school. Yeah, secondary school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, hinterland. That's true.
Yeah. Although I must say that when I Googled hinterland, this aspect of it didn't come up, lah. But if it's a term that is used in geography, I can see how it's used that way, lah.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Interesting to know.
Interesting, man.
Thank you, Original Goat One, for this clarification. Yeah.
Sweet. And what about your one show thing, man?
Actually, I guess the since we were just talking about that topic, lah, my one show thing is that Indiana Jones 5 is coming soon. And I think just a couple of weeks ago there was a Disney event where there was an unveiling of the trailer and the cast and everything, and it seems like there's a lot of early buzz about it, lah. It's by the director of the director who did Logan, the send off for Wolverine, right? And so if there's anyone to like close off Indiana Jones, the whole Indiana Jones franchise, because Harrison Ford is getting, he's getting old, right? Yeah. I think James Mangold is a good choice, lah. So yeah, I believe there was also a leak of an early trailer online. I haven't actually seen the trailer myself, but just generally, I just love it when there's a new Indiana Jones movie coming out, because the last time that it came out was I think 2008 or something like that, lah. And it's a very beloved franchise for me, but it doesn't have that same huge fan base that Star Wars has either. So now just enjoying the this general buzz about it, and then I'm seeing there's new Indiana Jones toys and all that coming out. I'm like getting pretty excited about the movie. Yeah. I just hope it doesn't disappoint. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Wow, that's cool, man. Did they give any timeline?
I think it's coming out next year, if I'm not wrong, 2023. But yeah, Harrison Ford took the stage and he said, this is a good one, and Kingdom of the fourth Indiana Jones movie, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, was wasn't that well reviewed by most people. So I got high hopes for this one, and I'm hoping that we don't get disappointed. Yeah.
I see. That's cool, man. Cool.
Yeah, how about you?
My one shook thing was just through a random newsletter I subscribed to, I found a link to a letter written by an ex-producer of Nirvana. So
okay.
I don't know if there are people young enough who have never heard of Nirvana, who listen to this podcast but never heard of Nirvana. But Nirvana is one of the most iconic rock bands of all time. And they did only 3 albums, but the lead singer Kurt Cobain was like a musical genius, and he died young, at 27, of a drug overdose. But this letter from the Letters of Note compilation, have you heard of the Letters of Note?
No, I haven't.
It's a compilation of historical letters that somehow were compiled into this book from very notable individuals lah.
Okay.
And it's just letters in their lifetime that were influential in their life. So this one comes from Steve Albini, who was the producer of Nirvana's third album. And it's just a letter he wrote to Nirvana. He typed it out and he just talked about why they should hire him as a producer lah. And it's cool because, you know, like if anyone listening is in the creative world or if you know people in it, there's always this balance between, okay, there's the creative side of things, but then you got your client, and sometimes it's just too many cooks spoil the broth lah. But his letter was very militant, saying, okay, my philosophy is that a lot of producers see music as a project and they see the band as one piece of the project. No, for me, the band is utmost priority. You know, I will do whatever it takes to let you bring your vision to life. And then he was just saying that, you know, if the record takes more than a week, somebody fucked up, because you should never stretch out projects like this. And he just goes on to list these things that even if I read, I'm like, wow, this guy, he has passion. He's like no nonsense. And even he said pay him like a plumber. Like, we agree on a rate. I don't want any royalties of your album. My job is to make it as good as possible. After that's yours. So it's just an interesting read coming from someone who's in the creative space. But I just think, yeah, it's just a nice read lah. And the letters of note, they just made me remember also some other people were raving about it a few years ago. I was like, hey, shit, that's kind of cool. But yeah, it's a easy and nice read.
Interesting. And where do you find it? You just found it on the newsletter lah.
Yeah, some newsletter I subscribed to. It was one of their recommended readings. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah, man. Cool. And all these links will be in the show notes, including the links to those reports, which Straits Times and Today. Please have it in some article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Help us out a bit in our whole research process as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Cool, man.
Cool.
All right.
Have a great long weekend. Happy Deepavali to everyone.
Yeah, man. Sweet. All right. Bye-bye.